there's some news items that we have to tackle because the finals have ended. There's some hirings, firings, free agency, all that type of stuff. So let's get right into it. First off, just came across this morning the Twitter machine, or whatever we call Twitter nowadays. The Cavs hiring Kenny Atkinson. Kenny, of course, spent a number of years with Golden State after 3+ years with the Brooklyn Nets, leading into the, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, all that stuff. So he spent a couple years in Golden State. I'm going to say licking his wounds, but been figuring some stuff out. And the Cavs are in such an interesting spot right now because, for one, you have the Donovan Mitchell situation where he can sign an extension with the Cavs, or if he chooses not to, it will, of course, be a signal that he wants out. It seems like all the things that we've been hearing up until this point it's very likely to happen, assuming they get the right coach. And if they're hiring Kenny Atkinson and they feel pretty confident about it, especially if Dan Gilbert, which has been reported by The Athletic, Dan Gilbert has been spearheading this coaching search, or spearheading the flip-flop from James Borrego being the leading candidate to now Kenny Atkinson taking over. Maybe he knows something that the rest of us do not. Now, I also think that ownership getting involved and basically changing the direction of coaching searches, not always the most positive thing, as evidenced because I live in Detroit. And I'm sure, as I will touch on a little bit later, Monty Williams, record contract, seem to be sort of directed by Tom Gores and not by Troy Weaver, who's no longer there because of all the situations and everything that happened there. And it just makes for a messy thing. It makes for very, very, I won't say unclean, but it just makes for a very tricky situation because you're wondering now, is the coach going to be answering to the general manager in the front office, or is the coach going to be answering to the owner? The power structure in these situations become very murky and muddy. Now, not just Donovan Mitchell they have to figure out. They also have to figure out, how do we best utilize and develop Evan Mobley? For those who have listened to this podcast, I've been here. If you want to sell your Evan Mobley stock, give it to me. I'll take it. I'm still on Evan Mobley Island. I still think that he is going to be as impactful. Maybe just it's going to be a little bit different. He hasn't put on a lot of weight. He hasn't developed a three-point shot. I'm not sure he will or if he has to. But with the composition of the roster, with Jared Allen being there, he's had to be the guy to try to take steps out. I wonder if the roster will look completely different, especially when you consider Darius Garland being there, playing with Donovan Mitchell, and then you got the two big guys, or at least two tall guys, and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I still believe in Mobley at least turning into a real bona fide all-star type of big. So that's what Kenny Atkinson is going to inherit. And of course, this will wind up setting off a domino effect, getting to Detroit. But before we get to Detroit, we got to go to LA, because the Lakers, to the surprise of no one, hired JJ Redick from ESPN, ABC. He's the color analyst during the NBA Finals. He, of course, did the Mind the Game podcast with LeBron James, which seemed to set off all types of bells, whistles, and alarms. Hey, what's going on here? Then, of course, there was that real interesting Dan Hurley courtship. And now they circle back to JJ Redick, who's had no coaching experience outside of, coaching maybe his kid's AAU team, a couple of years retired. I do think that JJ Redick is really smart. I do think that JJ Redick at least commands the attention of LeBron James. But we all know that LeBron has played for a bunch of different coaches that we all thought that he liked or had great relationships with going in. And then because coaching LeBron James and coaching the Lakers put you in a pressure cooker, you don't know how this stuff is going to turn out. I do know this. I don't know if JJ Redick can coach. I don't know if it matters if he can coach or not, to be perfectly honest. If they don't fix that roster, if they don't answer some very critical questions here, it doesn't matter whether JJ Redick is equipped enough. Like, I don't have to get into, I know some people have said it looked like he was undermining Darvin Ham by starting the podcast. We don't even have to get into that. By and large, you can make the case that you can fire at least over half of the coaches in the league if you want to. You can keep over half the coaches in the league if you want to. It's a matter of the lens in which you view it. And because the Lakers saw themselves as being a team that got to the Western Conference Finals the year before and found themselves getting waxed in the first round this year, and you got to see Anthony Davis, he didn't seem to really connect with Darvin Ham. I won't say he outwardly threw him under the bus, but if Darvin Ham was laying in the street and Anthony Davis was driving the bus, it didn't seem like he was moving out the way. So now you got to have a guy in JJ Redick who commands the respect and attention of both LeBron James and Anthony Davis, in addition to the fact that it's likely, or it feels likely, they're going to draft Bronny James. Can you do all of those things? Can you get LeBron's guy to come coach the team? Can you sign LeBron's son or draft LeBron's son and still do all those things, accomplish all those objectives, and still consider yourselves a championship franchise? I'm not sure if you can accomplish all those objectives. You got the D'Angelo Russell question. You got a bunch of other roster questions that I don't know if signing a coach or swapping out coaches is going to change. In addition to, is Anthony Davis going to get any better? Not to say that Anthony Davis isn't great, but I'm saying if he's not getting better than what he was this season, when he had a hell of a year, when he was on my not only all defensive ballot, but I think he was third or second on my defensive player of the year ballot. If he's not a better version than the outstanding version that he was this year, how good can you be with the roster as currently constructed? Because can you expect LeBron to play more games? LeBron will be 40 years old this year, y'all. 40. And I know we tend to think that LeBron is indestructible. I know we think that. We think that he's just going to continue to play forever, right? Give you the last few years. He played 71 games this past season. That was the most that he's played in a Laker uniform, not counting the COVID-shortened 2019-2020 season. He played 56 games and 22. He played 55 games the year before, 71. Do we anticipate that he's going to continue to play and be available at this high number? I'm not sure. It's just you find it very difficult to see that continuing because he's going to be 40 years old, all the tread on his tires. And then you add JJ Redick there. He's never coached before, as we've said. He's very intelligent, very smart, but you also have to worry about how he's going to command respect in the locker room, and people are saying or looking around and saying, LeBron hired you. So once again, do we answer to LeBron or do we answer to JJ Redick? It's a very tricky situation in LA because it's always a tricky situation in LA because that's how they do things over there.